Have you ever heard of the ancient gods who supposedly created humans as slaves? Meet the Anunnaki deities from ancient Mesopotamian cultures rumored to have chilling connections to human origins. Now, according to ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki descended from the sky. They were said to have genetically engineered humans, intending to use us as laborers. But why? To mine gold, a resource that they desperately needed on their home planet called Nibiru. This planet, also known as Planet X, is said to orbit the Sun every 36,000 years. This conspiracy theories believe that the Anunnaki will return to Earth when Nibiru is closest, leading to a significant event or revelation. But is there any truth to this, or is it just a fascinating myth? And if they were real, what would happen if the Anunnaki returned?
The man ate his victim in a bowl of pasta. In April 1998, David Harker met Julie Patterson in a pub in Darlington. 31-year-old Julie was out enjoying her evening, and David was known to be quite the charmer with women. The mother of four allegedly agreed to go back to David's place after going to the pub, and the two apparently started a romantic encounter. However, the evening soon turned into a nightmare for Julie when David claimed that he got bored. He proceeded to attack her with her own pair of tights and then cook parts of her body. He ate part of her thigh with a bowl of pasta and cheese and then dumped the rest of her body near Darlington Football Club. He bragged to people about this unaliving and claimed that he wanted to become a serial unaliver. He told friends that he wanted to be known as the Devil Man. One of the people that he'd bragged to actually reported this to the police. He was found guilty of manslaughter due to diminished responsibility and given life in prison.
So, I put detergent in my water every single day, and let me tell you what.
Why are there so many people on this app eating laundry detergent? I've seen a lot of bad medical advice on here, but eating laundry detergent straight out of the box for medical purposes seems to be the worst. It's ironic because tonight's episode is all about horrible medical advice that's been given throughout history. And if you think drinking borax is bad, wait until you hear about the time that a bunch of housewives accidentally got hooked on meth. So basically, during World War II, this new inhaler comes out. And doctors soon figure out that patients love this inhaler. Like, love it so much they buy the inhaler just to crack it open and eat the medicine out of it. And doctors also realize that the patients are losing a lot of weight, which is something they can make money off of. So enter amphetamine-based weight loss pills. Doctors were prescribing this meth microdose to women by the handful. And at first, women were like, great, I have all this energy and I'm losing weight. But then they started experiencing something called amphetamine psychosis. Like, they were straight up seeing demons in their toilets and thought everyone wanted to kill them. This is one of many pieces of terrible medical advice that's been given throughout history, so follow along for more tonight.
For the record, you are guilty of killing many women and girls.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
Ted, how did it happen? Take me back. What are the antecedents of the behavior that we've seen? So much grief, so much sorrow, so much pain for so many people. Where did it start? How did this moment come about?
I grew up in a wonderful home with two dedicated and loving parents, one of 5 brothers and sisters. But as a young boy, and I mean a boy of 12 or 13 certainly, that I encountered outside the home again, the local grocery store, the local drugstore, the softcore pornography, what people call softcore. As young boys do, we explored the back roads and sideways and byways of our neighborhood, and oftentimes people would dump the garbage and whatever they were cleaning out of their house, and from time to time we'd come across pornographic books of a harder nature than more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store.
Warning, one of the images in this video is quite disturbing. On January 3rd, Lacey Fletcher, age 36, died in her parents' home, fused to her couch, covered in urine and feces. She was described to have been sitting in a hole filled with liquid stool and urine by the coroner. She was surrounded by insect and rodent droppings and covered in insect bites. She was also found to have pieces of the couch in her digestive tract, meaning she was starving and she was eating the couch. Lacey had what's called locked-in syndrome. Unable to move her muscles, she was confined to that couch for nearly 12 years. Her death was ruled a homicide, and her parents, Sheila and Clay Fletcher, have been charged with secondary murder by means of at least a decade of the worst case of medical neglect authorities have ever seen. Stay tuned for updates on this case. We hope, for Lacey's sake, that justice is served.
Doctors working midnight shift get horrified after they capture the unexpected on the abandoned floor.
Ow! Lights are. Go in. Go in. Go in. Figure out where the lights are. I don't like that. I don't like that. Do it.
They look like evil eyes. You guys can come with me.
Yeah, of course we're going with you.
Thanks. Oh, it feels great. Was that you? Yeah. That's right. It feels good. Good curtain move. Yeah, it did. It moved. It moved. It moved. Yes, it did. It did. How did you not see that? Oh, okay.
On Wednesday, January 4th, 2023, in Enoch, Utah, this man, 42-year-old Michael Haight, murdered his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children inside their home before taking his own life. Court documents show that his wife, Tasha, had filed for divorce just 2 weeks earlier. Tasha's mother, 78-year-old Gail Earl, had been staying with the family after Christmas to help them transition into this new life. On Wednesday morning, Tasha did not show up for an appointment, after which a welfare check was ordered. Police then began searching for the entire family. At around 4 p.m. on Wednesday, they were found inside of their home, all deceased. This included the children, who were 17, 12, 7, and 4. The Enoch police chief has reported that the family had been investigated a few years prior, but didn't elaborate on what that investigation was about. So far, there are no witness reports or any reports of hearing gunshots, but that's not surprising because the lots that the homes are in the neighborhood are pretty large. Neighbors have described the Haights as a friendly family, welcoming people into the neighborhood and active in their church and community. Nobody expected that anything like this would ever happen. Police have said as witnesses are interviewed and more evidence is collected, more will come out about what happened. Rest in peace, Tasha, Gail, and the 5 children.
Not watch this video if you're home alone. This is the horrifying and still unsolved case of Mr. Cruel. In 1991, 13-year-old Carmine Chan was babysitting her younger siblings in Melbourne, Australia. At around 9 p.m, she went into her kitchen to find a man masked with a large knife. The mask was incredibly distinctive, with white stitching around the eyes and the mouth. He locked her younger sisters in the cupboard before dragging Carmine out onto the street and vanishing. A year later, unfortunately, her remains were discovered. She'd been unalived and left in bushland. Unfortunately, she was not the only victim of this masked killer. He was nicknamed Mr. Cruel by newspapers and was a S offender. He's believed to have kidnapped and S-A'd around 12 children. One of his other victims, 10-year-old Sharon Wills, was actually at home with her parents when he broke in. He tied the parents up and disabled their phones. He taped Sharon's mouth and kidnapped her. Although assaulted and obviously traumatized, thankfully he released her. He also kidnapped Nicola Linus and after a 50-hour ordeal released her as well. And the most shocking thing about Mr. Cruel is that his identity is still unknown. As far as we know, he's still alive and walking around to this day. At the time of offending, he is believed to have been roughly around 35 to 40 years old with sandy coloured hair. He is believed to have been located roughly around the area of Melbourne's Tullamarine Airport. If still alive today, police believe he'll be roughly in his 60s and still living in Melbourne, Australia.
3 women met their end at my hands, their blood used to craft soap and their fat to fashion candles. My name is Leonarda Cianciulli, born in 1894 in the town of Montella, Italy. Infamy surrounds my name as the soap maker of Correggio, a title earned from my heinous deeds during the 1930s. My life, filled with a series of tragedies including the loss of 13 out of my 17 children, left me emotionally scarred. The afflictions I faced intensified my protective instincts towards my eldest son, Giuseppe. But when he decided to enlist in the Italian army, I descended into madness, convinced that I had to perform human sacrifices to guarantee his safety. Between 1939 and 1940, I lured 3 unsuspecting women to my abode with false promises. Their lives were ended by me, their bodies boiled down to extract fat. I combined this gruesome ingredient with caustic soda to create bars of soap, a ghastly gift I distributed amongst friends and neighbors. Furthermore, I transformed the remaining flesh of my victims into a macabre cuisine of cakes that I served to those near and dear. However, my reign of terror came to a halt in 1940 when I was reported by a victim's sister. My judgment was 30 years of confinement and 3 years in a mental institution. I left this world in 1970, leaving behind a chilling legacy that resonates to this day.
This schoolboy stabbed his teacher to death in front of a classroom full of students. 61-year-old Anne Maguire was a Spanish teacher teaching in Leeds. She'd actually worked at the school for 40 years and she was only 5 months off retirement. However, in April 2014, something absolutely horrific happened. One of her students was 15-year-old Will Cornick. He'd always been described as a smart student who never really caused any trouble. Classmates regarded him as a polite student, but after he got diagnosed with diabetes, his personality seemed to change. In 2013, he tried to join the army, but because of his diagnosis, he was rejected. Being in the army had been his dream, so this was really upsetting for him. After failing to complete his Spanish homework, he was given detention by Anne. He also expressed a wish to her that he wanted to drop Spanish, but she wouldn't let him, which only angered him more. He began to develop a deep-rooted grudge against Anne. Shockingly, he reportedly messaged his friends on Facebook asking if one of them would kill her for him for £10. During one school day, halfway through his Spanish class, Will decided to get up and attack Anne with a knife. The classmates watched on in horror as he chased her out of the classroom. When there, another teacher heard her screams and tried to shield Anne from any more blows from him. Will then allegedly returned to his class and told his classmates how it was a shame that he hadn't killed her. However, Anne did actually pass away from her injuries. Will later admitted that he did plan also to kill 2 other teachers. One of them was actually pregnant at the time. He's been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years.
Tiptoe by the window, that is where I'll become tiptoe.
What do you think is going to happen?
So you find the defendant guilty of murder in the 2nd degree?
Yes.
Is that unanimous?
Yes.
Eric Smith was only 14 years old when he was given a sentence of 9 years to life in prison. Smith had been convicted of murdering 4-year-old Derek Roby. But before his arrest, many residents in Savona, New York, thought it might have been the work of an evil adult.
Late in the afternoon, the body of Derek Roby was found. It was just a brutal, brutal killing.
When police found Derek, they discovered that he had been lured into a wooded area not far from his home, strangled and beaten with rocks.
You know, when this terrible thing was done, I think everybody, including myself, thought it was an adult. And how could anybody do such a terrible, terrible thing?
But Smith had walked into the police command center 4 days after the murder, offering to help police solve the crime. Smith said that he had seen Derek that day with a white t-shirt on, holding a lunch bag. Investigators felt like Smith knew something, but didn't realize the killer was sitting right in front of them. Then 2 days after Derek Roby's funeral, Smith confessed.
Grandpa! Grandpa!
Yeah. I was there. I was there when my grandson confessed. And it was terrible.
Investigators and community members tried to understand why a 13-year-old boy would do such a thing. They learned that Smith had a history of being picked on as a young child. His bright red hair and freckles made him a target for bullies.
I don't know why he did it.
I asked him why he did it. His words almost verbatim were, "I don't know. I just saw this kid
this blonde kid, and I wanted to hurt him.
After he was convicted and sentenced, Smith was sent to Brookwood Juvenile Detention Center.
Love you, Eric. Love you, Eric. Love you, honey. Love you.
When Eric Smith was sentenced, was there a sense, now we can get on with our lives?
You hear the 9 years to life, and I think back then everybody was focusing on the life side of it.
Lori Value, the Doomsday Mormon murderer, was just found guilty of killing her 2 children. And those aren't the only deaths she was involved with. So Lori had married her husband Charles in the year 2006, and together they adopted his grandnephew JJ. But over the years, Lori became obsessed with a man named Chad Daybell and his Doomsday Mormon influenced teachings. Remember, he claimed that he lived 31 different lives on different planets and that Lori herself had lived 21 different lives. So in February of 2009, Lori informed her husband Charles, remember they were still married, that she no longer cared about their son JJ, their adopted grandnephew. She claimed that she was the reincarnated wife of Joseph Smith, the guy who created Mormonism, and she vanished for 58 days straight. Now that month, Charles filed for divorce. He said that his life was being threatened. He said that Lori had stolen his truck, $35,000 had gone missing from his bank accounts. And he even sought a protective order against his own wife, meaning that his wife Lori could not approach him in any way. But then, on July 11th, 2019, Charles was murdered by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Apparently, Alex claimed that he had confronted Charles about abusing Lori, his sister. Charles had swung at him with a baseball bat, he had retrieved a gun, and he shot and killed Charles on the spot. Now, initially, the police did not pursue this matter any further, but in 2021, Lori was charged with conspiracy to kill Charles. Now, at first, no one really thought too much of this, but something was about to happen that would change the course of how authorities would view Charles's death. So Chad Daybell, the entire time that he had been preaching to Lori and connecting with her on this soul level, had been married as well. And a few months after Charles, Lori's husband, was shot and killed, his wife, Tammy Daybell, was also found dead. Apparently, in October of 2019, she was shot at by a masked man in her own driveway. Then, 10 days later, she was found dead in her own bed. And at first, her death was attributed to natural causes. Chad claimed that she had had a terrible cough the day before she died. But people questioned this immensely because at the time she had been training for a marathon, she was perfectly healthy. And just 2 weeks after she died, she was married to Chad at the time that she died, Chad went and married Lori Vallow. So now, in a short period of time, both of their spouses had died under extremely suspicious circumstances, and they were married. But just a few months after her death, her body was actually exhumed because people weren't accepting the story. And it was just revealed this year during Lori Vallow's trial that they discovered that she had been asphyxiated, so strangled by somebody else. But keep in mind, this entire time, Lori still had her 2 children, JJ and Tylee, to look after. So what were they doing? Well, both children had apparently disappeared off the face of the earth in September of 2019, 2 months before Chad's wife Tammy was murdered. Tylee had last been seen at Yellowstone National Park early in the month, and a few weeks later, the last video footage of JJ ever was recorded on a doorbell camera in his own neighborhood. On September 24th, Lori contacted JJ's school to let him know that she was withdrawing him. I'm going to run out of time though, so I have to do a part 3.
No, silly, to dry it. But it exploded, and they were both found dead.
He trusted his gut and it saved his life. In the early 1970s, a college student was trying to make his way home by hitchhiking. A car pulls up beside him and the driver offers him a ride. As soon as they started moving, he felt a sense of unease, like something was off. Despite his gut feeling, he stayed silent and waited for the next opportunity to act. Finally, when the car slowed down, he opened the door and ran away. 2 years later, the same student was watching TV when he stumbled upon a special interview with a death row inmate. There in the audio recording, the interviewer asked the inmate, "Why did you remove the door handles inside your car?" The inmate responded, "The first time I tried to kill someone, I picked up a college hitchhiker who got smart at some point and jumped out of my car." So, lesson learned. As soon as the student saw the inmate's picture, he realized that he was supposed to be the first victim of John Wayne Gacy. This is why you should never travel alone. In 2005, a young woman embarks on a solo road trip across country. She came across the mountaintop motel. As she checked in, the clerk gave her an uncomfortable look and asked if she was traveling alone. Dismissing the question, she paid for her room and then took the key. But upon entering, she discovered something that nobody wants to ever see in their motel. There was cockroaches infesting her bed and crawling all over all the walls. Determined not to stay, she opted to sleep in her car in the motel parking lot. Well, around 3 a.m. she wakes up to witness the clerk using his own key to enter her room. Speeding off, she phones a friend requesting the Mountaintop Motel's address for the police. However, her friend hesitated before revealing that the motel had closed over a week ago. Is this famous Beatles member an imposter? Long ago, when the Sgt. Pepper album was released, people noticed that something was different about Paul's ears. They say that the real Paul died in a car crash and was replaced by an imposter. The Beatles were so afraid that their fans would be so heartbroken if they found out that they held a look-alike competition and found someone to take the place of Paul. But the guilt of this secret weighed heavily on the Beatles, so they started leaving hints of the tragedy. If you look closely, you can find strange clues in their album covers. The flowers on the Sgt. Pepper album are in the shape of Paul's left-handed bass, and on the Abbey Roads album, take a look at Paul, who is the only one walking barefooted, indicating that he's a corpse. Some fans wonder if this was a sign that the real Paul was no longer with us. Is there an imposter among us? The mystery remains unsolved. Follow, because my next story is crazy. Beware the swamps of Mississippi. You might just meet the witch of Yazoo. In the heart of Yazoo, Mississippi lies a chilling tale. A witch accused and burned at the stakes in the 1800s began a haunting legacy. But death was not the end. She vowed revenge from beyond. As the flames consumed her, she cursed the town. Within 20 years, she promised Yazoo would burn. And true to her words, a fire engulfed the town in 1904. Yet her spirit wasn't quelled. The witch of Yazoo still roams today. Visitors report eerie sightings in the swamp, a spectral figure in the mist, so tread carefully in Yazoo, or you just might encounter the vengeful spirit of the witch herself. He googled his name, and what happens next will make you quit the internet. To his surprise, he stumbled upon a website that had his full name as the domain. Curiosity piqued, he clicked the link and discovered a message board owned by someone with the same name, age, and interest as him. The guy found it strange that both he and the website owner lived in the same city, sharing a rare name. Strangely, the coincidences only grew stronger. The website owner had a dog with the same name as his childhood pet, posted a picture of a car identical to the one he drove in college, and even mentioned his favorite restaurant from a past job. Intrigued, he decided to leave a message on the website, only to realize it was a static page with no interactive features. So he sent an email to the owner expressing his surprise at the shared name. The following day, the website vanished without a trace. His inbox, however, held a single chilling reply. Found you. Beware the nights in Minnesota's Cannock Chase Forest. A place of beauty by day turns sinister as darkness falls. The trees whisper tales of the black-eyed children, their chilling presence setting the story in motion. But these aren't your ordinary lost children seeking help. They appear at your car window, their eyes as black as the night, asking for a ride home. Their voices are hypnotic, their requests seemingly innocent yet deeply unsettling. Yet those who let them in are never seen or heard from again. So if you find yourself in Cannock Chase after sunset, remember this tale. Drive on, do not stop, for the black-eyed children might be waiting. Will you heed this warning? But what he finds out will haunt you. In 2015, a college student sat alone in his friend's basement trying to get some work done. But as soon as he began, some strange noises echoed through the floorboards above him. It sounded like furniture was being moved. He attempted to shut it out, yet the noises kept getting louder and more unbearable. Unable to concentrate, he picked up his phone to text his friends upstairs, but as he typed out the message, a deep sense of dread washed over him, and his friend's reply was chilling. "No one is home. We went to Wisconsin for the weekend." With his heart racing, the student stumbled out of the basement and ran to the nearest window. Peering inside, he saw the darkness of the empty house, with no sign of anyone being there. He had been completely alone the whole time. Beware the lighthouse on Wood Island, Maine. In the 1800s, a lighthouse keeper and his wife lived in isolation on Wood Island. To combat loneliness, a piano was shipped to entertain the wife. But the wife knew only one song, driving to keep her mad. Unable to bear the incessant tune, the keeper snapped, destroying the piano with an axe. In a fit of insanity, he murdered his wife and then himself. Now their spirits are said to emerge on foggy nights, forever restless. Locals claim to hear the wife's long song echoing from the lighthouse. So if you ever visit Wood Island, listen closely. You might just hear a ghostly melody. Never open your door to a child at night, especially if their eyes are pitch black. It's a quiet suburban neighborhood. You're home alone when a knock echoes. Two children stand outside, their eyes as dark as the night itself. But these aren't ordinary children. There's something far more sinister. They ask to come in, their voices monotone. You feel an inexplicable dread. Reports suggest that they bring misfortune, even death, to those who let them in. They're about to close the door when one says, "We won't hurt you. Remember, never let the black-eyed children in." Beware of late-night walks in the woods. You never know what you might step on. In the dead of night, a young couple ventured into the dense forest. An eerie feeling crept over the man, but his girlfriend brushed it off. One evening, they watched an interview with a death row inmate. He recounted a night when a couple unknowingly stumbled upon his freshly committed crime in the woods. Their blood ran cold as the inmate revealed his identity, Ted Bundy. The couple was left haunted, realizing they had walked over a victim's body with a notorious killer lurking nearby. Always remember, the woods at night hide more than just the shadows. Never open your door to a child at night, especially if their eyes are pitch black. It's a quiet suburban neighborhood. You're home alone when a knock echoes. Two children stand outside, their eyes as dark as the night itself. But these aren't ordinary children. There's something far more sinister. They ask to come in, their voices monotone. You feel an inexplicable dread. Reports suggest that they bring misfortune, even death, to those who let them in. They're about to close the door when one says, "We won't hurt you. Remember, never let the black-eyed children in." In 2017, an old woman who lived alone thought she saw something strange in her backyard. She went to the window to take a look. As she looked, she saw a shadowy figure standing outside. Scared, she watched the figure while calling the police, but when she hung up, the figure was gone. The police arrived and found her front door unlocked. They went in and saw her still sitting by the window. They searched the backyard but found nothing. When they checked inside the house, they found big footprints that weren't hers on the first floor. That's when they figured out what happened. The woman wasn't seeing a shadowy figure outside. She was seeing the reflection of someone who was in the room with her.
I imported over 1,000 to 300 kilos of cocaine, then stabbed my cousin to death for money. My name is Quincy Proms, and my terrible story begins in January 2020, when the police chanced upon a colossal stash of cocaine hidden away within a container at the port of Antwerp, Belgium. A few months later, in July, a family gathering took an unfortunate turn when I stabbed my cousin following a heated argument. What sparked this violent act? A drug deal gone sour. As per investigators, the early year drug haul was valued at a staggering 75 million euros. Despite already being wealthy, my relentless pursuit of more wealth led me to jeopardize my career. Today, the Public Prosecution Service of the Netherlands has requested a minimum 2-year prison sentence for my actions. As for now, I am with my club, Spartak Moscow in Russia, and I have no intentions of leaving. If they want me, they'll have to come to get me. What do you reckon my potential prison sentence could be considering all of this? Subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.